Hey, what's up? It's Nash. In today's video, we're talking about how to go full-time as a content creator, and more importantly, the 5 mistakes that you are probably making right now that are preventing you from doing so. Now, this video is mostly for people that are in that 3,000 to 5,000 range. Some people might be a little bit less, some a little bit more, but ultimately you have a few clients, but you feel like you're not charging enough and you're just kind of spinning your wheels. You're in that grind. You're working a lot, but you're not getting paid your worth. These are the 5 mistakes that you are likely doing that are keeping you stuck. So the first mistake I see a ton of content creators make is not treating your content business like a real business. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you want to grow your business. And if you want to grow your business, there's really only one thing that actually matters. And that is, drumroll, sales. So here's the deal. So many content creators shy away from this idea of sales. But the thing is, if you want to go full time, you are going to have your own business, or ideally that's the goal, right? So if you do not actually know how to do sales, then it's going to be virtually impossible for you to ever go full time. So you've got to learn how to do this stuff. Because the problem is, if you're not optimized in your business, you're competing against other people who are. You can't expect to get jobs from the pros who've been doing this for 10 years if you are not putting in at least equal, if not more effort into learning these kind of things and optimizing yourself, right? I talk to creators every single day and I ask them where are you at in your business? A lot of them are like, I'm not full-time yet. I want to go full-time, but some things are standing in the way. I'm like, okay, so what do you think is in the way of you going full-time? And they'll mention things like, I don't have enough followers, or I feel like my outreach isn't good enough, or, clients don't respond to my emails, or all these different things. But then I'll ask them, how much time are you actually spending optimizing these things? And they'll be like, oh, just, a few hours a day or something like that. And I'm like, bro, you are competing against people who take this extremely seriously, and you think that you're going to take jobs from them by working 2 hours a day? It's just like, that's not how that works. Sorry to be blunt, but it's not going to work for you. And you may as well just go get a job. If you want to do this, you have to take it seriously. So the problem is a lot of people aren't optimizing their portfolio, their outreach, their sales process, their client results. And because these things are not optimized, because you haven't spent the time and energy and effort to do that, what happens is other people come in, and someone who actually does take it seriously is going to blow you out of the water because they're dialed in, they're fully committed, they're doing the necessary things, and they're eliminating the unnecessary things, which we're going to talk about here in just a sec. And ultimately, they just take this thing serious. They're not messing around. They're not here to just make a side business. They're here to actually do this for legits and actually support their family. And that's why they're successful. So let me just bring it home here. So a lot of people I talk to are like this. They're like this boxer who wants to step in the ring, right? He's wearing the gear. He's got the cameras. He's got everything. He looks the part. He's maybe even posting on Instagram. He's done the free collabs. He's worked with a few clients. He looks the part, but he's not trained up to actually go and get the clients consistently like some other people are. So what happens is when you get in the ring with somebody like this, Conor McGregor, somebody like me, or some of these other professional content creators, right? Who do you think is going to win? Do you think this guy here is going to win? Or do you think Conor McGregor is going to win? Well, chances are Conor's going to knock out this dude in about 2 seconds. Because why? Because he spent the money on a trainer, right? He spent the time honing in his diet and working out twice a day. He's in the gym all the time. He's doing this. He takes it seriously, right? Whereas this guy, it looks like he just put on the outfit, called it a day. Maybe, in your case as a content creator, right, it's starting to post on social, or, you've done a few free collabs, or you got the gear or whatever, but you're not actually fully committed to doing this thing. And because you're not fully committed, you get blasted by these guys who are taking all the jobs, right? You can't expect somebody to hire you when you are like this, right? No one, if you're in Vegas, no one's going to bet on this guy winning because he's not trained up. He's not ready to take these jobs. So you have to switch that paradigm, and you have to become this guy and make everyone else look like this. So then the question is, how do you actually do that? And we're going to get into that here later in this video. But ultimately, you want to be this guy that makes the rest of your competition look like a terrible choice because you are the only option that can help the client get the results. That's how you win in this space. And the only way you can do that is when you put in the time and effort and money to get to this level where you are the best in the world at what you do. Because ultimately, you are competing against the best in the world at what they do. So you can't expect to put in side hustle time to make this a full-time living. It's not going to happen. So the second one is that you focus way too much on social media and vanity metrics. And I'm not hating, because trust me, I was in that space as well. I've actually grown my following to over 100,000 followers. I spend way less time doing that and focusing on that now than I used to. But for the first 3 years of my business, I was like honing in, like posting every single day, trying to get my engagement up. I was in engagement groups, like looking at vanity metrics, all this stuff. Why? Because I thought the more followers I had, the better chance I had of actually landing clients. I had this thought process where if I had 100,000 followers, that was like the holy grail. And as soon as I hit that, these brands would just start coming at me and just like, I would be flooded with jobs. And to be honest, I do get some inbound leads, but for the most part, most of my jobs are actually through connections I made through other means that are outside of social media. I talk to people that have 1 million followers that are struggling to get brand deals. I know, it's shocking, right? But followers don't actually translate to dollars. I've also talked to people that have no social following whatsoever. Like I'm talking, they don't even have a social media and they're doing brand shoots for $100,000. So it's clearly not the social media following that matters. It must be something different. Now, I'm not saying that this is illegitimate, like you 100% can start getting jobs off social media, but what I am saying is that it's inefficient. It took me 3 years to build up to 100,000, and for some people, it'll take way longer or it'll never even happen. Some people, they get lucky and, they get 300,000 in a year or something like that, right? So let's just say on average, it's 3 years. So you spend 3 years of your life posting on Instagram. Let's just say this is like Instagram here, right? And what happens is you spend, every day posting, doing stories, whatever. And let's just say if you're actually taking this seriously, you're spending about, let's say 20 hours a week doing that. And that's pretty conservative. Well, let's just say you're spending 20 hours a week from creating the content to posting, to engaging, to doing all these things. Now imagine if you took this 3 years of time and instead of doing this, you actually learned how to do sales, okay? How to refine your client processes, how to do your outreach, how to message and position yourself as somebody who's actually valuable. Imagine if you spent this 3 years doing that. Do you think it's possible that you probably would be making a whole lot more money there and you'd also be working with the clients you actually want to be working with? You would learn the skills that you actually need to not even have to rely on this, right? And ultimately, you would spend that 20 hours or whatever a week actually building a skill set for something that is going to build a business. And to be honest, you don't need 3 years to build up 100K, right? You don't need that. You could honestly build and learn the skills that you need to learn in about 3 months here, right? So I'm not saying that the whole social media thing is illegitimate, and 100% is, and I have grown mine to do that, and I do get inbound leads. But if I were to choose a business model in terms of I wanted to get the best results the quickest, 100% would learn things like sales and outreach and messaging, positioning, psychological tactics of like how to actually position yourself and strategy, because those are the things that really matter. And those are the things that ultimately, if you want to do well here, you have to learn anyways. So you may as well just learn it here. So that brings me to the next one, which is sort of similar, but a little bit different, which is that you're focusing way too much on getting the client and not enough on the client process or what happens once you actually get the client. So there's all these videos, including I've put out tons of these videos, obviously, but there's a lot of these videos online about how to actually get clients, but there's not much said about what to do once you actually get the client, right? Because it's so much harder to go in cold to try to close a client that you've never worked with than it is to get a client on retainer or at least on a recurring basis, right? It's so much easier to sell a client that you've done good work for over and over again than it is to get a new one. The problem is if you don't have an actual client process that's repeatable, then it's very difficult for you to create the experience for a client that they would want to work with you again. And I'm not just talking just like, jump on a call with them and then send them the pics over Dropbox and then call it a day, right? I'm talking if you're working with a high-end brand, they expect a high-end experience, okay? So if you go into Gucci, you're going to expect to get wined and dined. You're going to expect to get the champagne. You're going to expect to have a very tailored experience for you. Whereas you go to Target, you ask, where's the plates? And they're going to be like, oh, it's on aisle 4. And they won't even follow you, right? They'll just say it's on aisle 4 and have a nice day. That's what it's going to be like. Whereas when you have that high-end experience, it's going to be much different, but you pay for it, right? So some of you guys I talk to, and you're like, I want to work with these luxury resorts, but you don't have a process to work with those types of clients. Those types of clients expect something very different than what you are currently offering. So how do you refine your contract and invoicing? How do you refine your communication so that everyone is on the same page all the time and that you automate that, right? How do you refine your kickoff calls and your mood boards and all that stuff so everyone is on the same page? Once you actually do the shoot and you do the edits, how quickly are you sending them in? How quick are your revisions? How do you ask for reviews? How do you handle that entire process and how seamless is it? Does the client have to chase you and wonder where the photos are, right? If you're running your business like that, it's going to be very difficult for you to stay in business because no one's going to refer you out and they're 100% not going to work with you again. If you're late consistently delivering photos, like why would they want to work with you again? It's just a nightmare. They won't, right? So you have to refine these client processes and you have to understand exactly what the clientele that you are working with expects so that you can over deliver on that. Which brings me to the next one is that you're probably afraid to charge more and you have this scarcity mindset where every client is a do or die situation. If you don't get it, you can't pay the bills and you're like, okay, I'll do anything to get this client because getting half of the rate that I wanted is better than zero. And you end up just compromising a lot of your values as a result, and it's just a whole mess. And if you're interested in learning how to get better high-paying clients, I actually have a video somewhere on this video. You can click and check it out. This is like about how to get high-paying clients, where I talk a lot more in depth about this kind of stuff. But if you're afraid to charge more, it's likely because you are afraid of rejection, right? You're afraid of rejection because you think if you say that you are worth this much, then the client will actually not think you're worth that much. And because you're afraid that you're going to get rejected and therefore lose the job, you just either cheap out on them or you accept a discount. So it comes back to this thing called the feedback loop. And this is kind of a common principle throughout life in general, right? But I'm going to apply it specifically to this. So how it works is the actions you take. So let's say in this example, the action you take is saying, I charge $5,000 for a video, right? The action you take results in a certain result. So in this case, you say, I'd charge $5,000. The client's like, we can't pay $5,000. How about $2,500? Okay, that's the result. The feedback that you get is that, okay, the client can't actually afford what I'm charging, so maybe it's actually not worth that much. And that informs your belief system, which is, okay, maybe because this client can't afford it, my work is actually not worth $5,000. Maybe I should discount it to $2,500. So then the next time that informs your action that the next time you pitch, you might say it's only worth $2,500, right? As opposed to the $5,000 that you think it was worth before. And it just is a vicious cycle that goes down. But in the same way that it works negatively, it also works positively. So your actions, say you do charge $5,000 and the client's like, maybe they have some objections, but they do choose to go with it, right? So they're like, okay, we'll go with it. Gives you the feedback of, okay, maybe I am valuable. Maybe this is worth $5,000, right? So then you put in the effort to make it worth $5,000 to the client. And then as a result, the client gets better results because you are putting more effort into it. You're intentionally trying to do a great job. Supports your belief system that, okay, this is worth $5,000 and maybe I can even charge more on the next one, which leads to your action where either you charge more on the next one or the same amount or something like that, right? But the problem is when you're afraid of rejection, you believe that the action that you take here is going to result in a negative result here, right? So as to avoid the negative results here, you just don't do the action at all. So maybe in this case, you're afraid of rejection and you don't send out emails, right? Or you don't send out enough emails because you're like, well, I've sent out 50 before and no one responded or no one was interested or whatever it might be. So you just don't do the action at all because you want to avoid the result of the rejection. So how do you overcome that? Well, you actually have to disassociate these two things. So we're going to disassociate these. So the results that you get are actually irrelevant. What actually matters is the action, okay? So the action of sending the email every single day, sending whatever it is, 10, 20 emails every single day is the action. And just by doing that, that's a win. It doesn't matter if the client responds or if they don't respond or if they close or they don't close. The actual tangible result of that really doesn't matter, at least at this stage. What matters is that you are doing the thing. Now, once you start doing the thing, you'll start to see common patterns where it's like, okay, when I use this certain type of copy, it works better than when I use this other type of copy. And then you can understand, okay, so the result is when I use this type of copy, it actually gets more responses as opposed to when I do this. So therefore, my actions should adjust to be that I'll send this type of copy more often, which will result in a better response rate, better close rate, which means that that is just a better overall process and I am actually valuable. So I'll do it again and I'll continue sending more emails. And eventually you can even build a team on this. But if you are afraid of rejection, none of this stuff will even work. It'll actually work negatively for you versus positively for you. And that brings me to the last one, which is most creators don't have a predictable system for success. I talk to creators all the time and I'll ask them, like, how do you get your business? And a lot of them don't even know, or it's not predictable at all. It's something like word of mouth, right? So the problem with word of mouth, I'll just put Juan over here. The problem with word of mouth is that it's extremely inconsistent. It's not predictable. It's actually the opposite of it. Now, word of mouth is great because it's basically free marketing, but again, it's not predictable and it relies on somebody else to get you business, right? You aren't actually going out there to get business. Now, the other option is that some creators are like, they're gung-ho about sending emails. So maybe for, 2-3 days, the first week, they're just sending tons of emails and it's just something that's copy-paste and it's just like, it doesn't work or hasn't been proven to work, whatever. They get gung-ho about sending these and then the results from the feedback loop are that they're not getting the responses they want. So then they get discouraged, or maybe they even close one of these, but they just stop doing the action that was able to get them success in the first place. And as a result, they end up back to square one where they're broke and they're like, oh crap, I got to send more emails. And it just is a mess. It's not a predictable system for success. So how do you rectify that? Well, again, what's the only thing that actually matters in business? It's sales. Okay. So we need to optimize for sales. We need to optimize for getting more business or getting more repeat business or charging more. Those are the only ways that we can start making more money and grow our business as a content creator so that we can actually get the freedom to work with the clients we want. So how do you do this? Well, I use a process called precision prospecting, which makes the entire process of getting clients extremely simple. It's a really just easy way to explain it. But essentially what you need to do is, number one, you got to get appointments. If you're not getting appointments, getting conversations with brands, then what are you doing? Like you don't even have a business because you're not optimizing for sales, right? I don't even know what you're optimizing for if you're not having those conversations. So how do you do it? Well, you got to pick a niche, then you got to find brands on Google, Instagram, Amazon, whatever it might be that fit that niche. You reach out to the decision maker through email. Usually that's your brand manager, your marketing manager. And then all this stuff doesn't work unless you actually formulate a message that speaks to their core desire. Okay, so most people are focusing on this stuff and they're like, how do I find the brands? What tactics do I use to find these brands? How do I find the decision maker? What Chrome plugin do I use or whatever, right? That stuff is all easy. That's not the hard part. That's super simple. You can find any of these people's email like really, really simple. The most important thing is actually this. It's how do you formulate the message to speak to the person's core desire, right? The person's core desire, okay, the person being the brand manager or the marketing manager, is typically to make more sales, to make their boss happy, to get a better ROI on their ad spend, to get more use out of their social platforms, right? It could be a bunch of different things, but if you don't understand how to formulate your message that speaks to that core desire, then you are going to get left on red, left and right, and you're going to be in this situation where you have this negative feedback loop where you're sending these emails, they're not getting responses, so therefore you're like, well, this sucks, it doesn't work, maybe I just sent 1 million with the same copy and paste email. And then you make this belief of like, oh, email doesn't work, this sucks. And then you don't send any emails. And then guess what? You have to go back and get a 9-to-5 because eventually you actually have to pay for your lifestyle. So that's not what we want. We don't want that. So you got to know how to formulate a message that actually speaks to the person's core desire. The second one is you got to close the deal. You got to get them on a call. You got to build that know, like, and trust with the client, and they're much more likely to hire you at those higher prices when you actually get them on a call. Now, also, you have to run them through a framework, something that's repeatable, something you can even teach to a sales associate in the future, right? You should know this stuff yourself so you can teach this to other people in the future. I use a storytelling sales framework. That's what I call it. I just think it's very simple, where we're taking a client from point A, where they're unhappy, to point B, where they're super happy, and basically you're the hero. It saves the day to take them from point A to point B because they can't do it themselves. That's essentially in a box what storytelling sales framework is. However, if you want to get more in depth, more into the weeds on it, I actually have a video that talks all about that you can check out somewhere on this video after this video is done. So you got to take them through the framework so that you can have a predictable system of success and a predictable close rate, right? Once you do that, the next thing is getting great client results. So instead of being a content creator who's completely disconnected from the outcome, doesn't really care what the heck happens with their content, become a marketing partner, become somebody who's invested in the outcome of your content. Become invested in how they're using it in their advertising, how they're using it on their social, how they're using it just in general. Give them tips, make your content specific to certain different goals that they're actually trying to achieve, right? When you're a marketing partner, that's far more helpful than just being a content creator, right? Because you're making content that supports their core desire. That's why it's so important to understand what these clients actually need. And when you can speak their language, they'll be much more likely to respond to you. Okay, that makes you stand out from the crowd. So again, you're not going to be this guy here. You're actually going to be this guy here that makes the rest of these people irrelevant. Because guess what? The rest of the content creators are this guy. They're just like, I'll go take some pictures for you. I literally could care less what happens. So they look like this guy. He's just posing, but he's not actually this guy that's going out there and actually getting the results for the clients, right? People bet on Conor McGregor because they know that he is going to get the results. He's going to win. That's why they're willing to bet money on him. They're not going to bet on this guy because he's not proven. He's not invested his time and effort into knowing how to get the results for the client. So they're not going to bet on him. They're going to bet on this guy. And right now, there's a lot of pros out there that these brands are betting on. So how do you get in that position? Well, you have to train and you have to get to the level where they're at, right? So then once you have closed them, the last thing is growing your team so you can get out of the trenches, so you can reinvest, you can rehire for positions that you don't want to be personally involved in. And you can only focus on the parts of the business that you actually want to be involved in, which is ultimately going to lead to more time, more money, and more freedom, which if I were to guess is the exact reason that you're watching this video to begin with. So if you just watched this video and you saw all 5 of these common mistakes and you're like, bro, I think that is me right now, then I'd encourage you to check out the link in the description below, book in a call with me, because I want to show you how to implement a system like this into your business so you can get more consistent clients paying you higher rates so that you can have this more time, more money, more freedom aspect in your content creator business. You can have the freedom to choose who you actually want to work with and turn down the ones that you don't, or delegate them out to a team that can help you out. So if that's interesting to you, go ahead and check the link in the description below and schedule a call with me. Otherwise, if you got value out of this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and check out the rest of the videos on my channel. I mentioned a few throughout this video, so you're definitely going to want to check those out as well. Subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram at Nash Hagen. I love talking to you guys, love talking to fellow creators and helping them out, getting them out of the stuck points. So again, hopefully this video is valuable for you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.